Mark Thompson had always been the kind of guy who fixed things with his hands. Leaky faucets, broken bikes, even the occasional scraped knee from a playground tumble. But nothing in his toolbox prepared him for raising Lily alone. It had been 3 years since Sarah, his wife, passed away in a car accident that stole the light from their lives. Lily was just 5 then, a wide-eyed bundle of curls and questions, and Mark had thrown himself into fatherhood like it was a full-time job with overtime. He worked as a mechanic during the day, grease under his nails and sweat on his brow, and at night, he was the storyteller, the chef, the everything. Their small apartment in the suburbs was filled with the echoes of what used to be. A framed photo of Sarah on the mantel, her favorite mug still in the cupboard, but Mark made sure Lily's world stayed bright. He braided her hair after watching countless YouTube tutorials, packed her lunches with smiley face notes, and coached her soccer team on weekends, even if he tripped over his own feet half the time. Life wasn't easy. Money was tight. Bills piled up like autumn leaves, and Mark often skipped his own meals to ensure Lily had the extras, a new pair of sneakers for school or that sparkly backpack she begged for. The neighbors whispered sometimes, pitying the poor single dad, but Mark shrugged it off. He had Lily, and she was his anchor. At 8 years old, she was a firecracker, smart as a whip, with her mother's kind eyes and a laugh that could melt the hardest heart. She loved drawing pictures of their adventures, like the time they built a fort out of cardboard boxes and pretended to be explorers in a far-off land. But beneath the surface, Mark carried a quiet fear. What if he wasn't enough? What if he missed something crucial, the way Sarah would have known instinctively? He pushed those thoughts down, focusing on the routine that kept them afloat: school drop-offs, homework battles, and bedtime stories where he did all the voices to make her giggle. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the shop where a transmission job had gone sideways, Mark came home to find Lily quieter than usual. She was curled up on the couch, clutching her stomach with a frown that didn't suit her freckled face. "Tummy hurts a bit, Daddy," she mumbled when he asked. Mark chalked it up to the pizza they had the night before, maybe too much cheese, and gave her some ginger ale. They ate a simple dinner of macaroni and cheese, her favorite, and he helped her with her math homework, turning fractions into a game about slicing pie. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Mark carried her to bed, her small frame light in his arms. He tucked her in under the soft comforter, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Sweet dreams, kiddo. Tomorrow's another adventure." She smiled weakly, but there was something in her eyes, a hesitation, that he dismissed as tiredness. Little did he know, the real adventure was about to begin, one that would test the limits of his love and force him to confront the gaps in his parenting armor. That night, Mark collapsed into his own bed, exhausted but content. He dreamed of Sarah, as he often did, her standing in the kitchen, laughing at one of his bad jokes. But the dream shattered when he heard a soft whimper from Lily's room around midnight. Groggy, he stumbled in, flipping on the lamp. There she was, sitting up in bed, her pajamas rumpled and her face pale. "Daddy, I think something's wrong," she said, her voice small. Mark's eyes followed her gaze to the sheets, where a dark red spot stared back at him like an accusation. Blood. His mind raced. Had she fallen? Was there an injury he hadn't noticed? Panic surged through him like electricity, his mechanics. Hands trembling as he pulled back the covers. "Lily, what happened? Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice cracking. She shook her head, tears welling up, and in that moment, Mark felt the weight of being alone crash down harder than ever. He scooped her up, heart pounding, ready to rush to the emergency room, his mind flooding with worst-case scenarios: internal bleeding, some hidden illness, or God forbid, something from the accident's lingering shadow. But as he held her close, she leaned in and whispered something that stopped him cold. Chapter 2. The Whisper That Healed. The whisper was barely audible over the thrum of Mark's racing heart. "Daddy, I think I'm becoming a woman." Lily's words hung in the air, innocent and profound, as Mark froze, piecing it together. Blood on the sheets, not from an injury, but from her first period. At 8, was that even possible? His mind blanked. Sarah had always handled the girl talks, and Mark had assumed there was time, years, even, before this milestone. He set Lily down gently on the edge of the bed, his panic shifting to a mix of relief and overwhelming inadequacy. "Oh, honey," he managed, sitting beside her and pulling her into a hug. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing quietly, and he realized this wasn't just about the blood. It was about fear, confusion, and the absence of her mom in a moment made for mothers and daughters. Mark took a deep breath, forcing calm into his voice even as his thoughts swirled. "It's okay, Lily. This is normal. It's part of growing up." But inside, he was reeling. How did he explain this? He remembered vague health class lessons from his own childhood, but nothing practical. Gently, he helped her change into clean pajamas and fetched a towel for the bed, all while reassuring her that she wasn't sick, that this happened to every girl eventually. Mom would know exactly what to say, Lily sniffled, and Mark's heart ached. She would, wouldn't she? But we've got each other, right? We'll figure this out together. He stayed up with her, turning the scary night into a quiet conversation under the lamp's glow. He shared stories of his own awkward growing-up moments, like the time he got his first zit before a school dance, making her laugh through the tears. By dawn, they had a plan, a trip to the store for supplies, and Mark promised to learn everything he could. The days that followed were a whirlwind of challenges. Mark dove into research, books from the library, online articles, even awkward calls to his sister for advice. He learned about puberty starting earlier for some girls, sometimes as young as 8, due to genetics or environment. It hit him how much he'd been winging it, relying on love alone without the knowledge to back it up. Lily faced her own hurdles. Embarrassment at school, where she worried about accidents or questions from friends. One afternoon, she came home in tears after a classmate teased her for carrying a pad in her backpack. Mark held her as she cried, then role-played ways to respond with confidence. "You're brave, Lily. Braver than I ever was at your age." Together, they turned it into a bonding ritual. Monthly, girl power, nights with ice cream and talks about bodies, emotions, and remembering Sarah. Mark even joined an online support group for single dads, sharing his story anonymously and finding camaraderie in others' struggles. But the real resolution came months later, on Sarah's birthday. Mark and Lily visited her grave, laying flowers and sharing memories. Lily whispered to the headstone, "Mom, Daddy's doing okay." He panicked at first, but now he's like a pro. Mark smiled, tears in his eyes, realizing how far they'd come. The whisper that night hadn't just explained the blood, it had opened a door to deeper communication, vulnerability, and growth. Lily blossomed, more confident and open, while Mark shed his fear of not being enough. He started a blog for other single parents, titled Whispers in the Night, sharing tips on everything from periods to heartbreak, turning their panic into purpose.